Hi, my name is Stephanie and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be going over my higher education journey, essentially the journey that brought me to Oxford, as well as the journey that brought me onto a graduate scheme, because it is largely the same story, so I figured I might as well combine the two and just continue the timeline a bit beyond Oxford in that sense. I really hope that this will answer your questions, because often if you reach out to me, you tend to ask me what subjects I did in high school for A-levels or what my bachelor's degree actually was, and hopefully this will answer all those questions on how I actually managed to go from where I started to Oxford and then onto a graduate scheme. So let's get started and let's do some time travel back to 2015. So in 2015 I lived in Amsterdam, which is where I grew up, and I attended Hervormd Lyceum Zuid, which is the high school that I went to, and I was in my final year. I graduated back in 2015. If I can find a photo of that, I will insert it. I'd have to dig. But yeah, I spent 6 years at this particular high school. In the Netherlands, school system works very differently from the one in the UK. So I didn't sit A-levels, and therefore also not just 3 subjects. I had to choose about 8 or 9 of them, and I ended up choosing C&M. We had about like 4 streams that you could pick between. I chose the most humanities one in that stream, but I did add on Latin and biology, which is not necessarily very standard to do in my like school structure. So I did subjects such as French, but also maths, because that's mandatory, Dutch, because, well, obviously, hey, we're in the Netherlands, Dutch is mandatory subjects, history, geography, I'm like really digging right now, Latin, biology, more courses. I don't even remember exactly what I did in high school. Either way, I had 8 subjects in total, and I sat all 8 of them at the end. It was a lot and it was quite stressful. And then in terms of extracurriculars in high school, so there aren't really loads of them in the Netherlands in that sense. So I did do the school paper for quite a while, but that was the only one that was actually sort of there and sort of helping out when we had these open houses for future students coming in to like check out the school and stuff. I'd be around, but that was about the extent of all the extracurriculars that my school offered. Yeah, we did have like shows and stuff where people would sing, but I'm not great at singing, so I wasn't really participating in those necessarily. So in that sense, I wasn't really that active in school. Yeah, I sort of was, but it's also very different from a lot of other countries that are out there. So yeah, take it as you will. I think I was more active than an average Dutch student in high school, but I was not like crazy active if you compare it to some of my like American peers. And I was very set on studying French, so that was my dream goal, and I had it set in my mind that I wanted to go to study in France. I wanted to study French literature, so lettres modernes in France. That was my absolute goal. I got into a university in France. I was really excited to go, and sort of last minute it all sort of fell through, which was quite sad. It actually boiled down to the fact that I couldn't find housing in France, which sounds very, very stupid and unprepared. I'm well aware of that, but I ended up having a problem with Crous, which is sort of the government organization in France that handles student housing, which therefore meant that I didn't have housing at the very last minute moment. It was August. I was supposed to start in September. So I freaked out at that point, ended up emailing the University of Amsterdam, and they accepted me very last minute. So I ended up at the University of Amsterdam in 2015, and I started studying French language and culture. That was the name of my degree. It's a Bachelor's of Art. It's a 3-year degree, and my first year actually all was well and I quite enjoyed it, and then it went a bit downhill from that. I can make like a whole video on this as like a whole separate story, but it boils down to the fact that I was a bit disappointed in the level and the quality of education during my bachelor's degree and some of my professors. That was a bit of a shame. I did enjoy the liberty that the University of Amsterdam as a university gave me, in the sense that I was able to pick up Italy studies, so essentially the same degree I was doing but for Italian literature, and I started doing that in 2016. So in my second year I took on essentially an extra degree, so it's sort of like a double major or dual degree, however you want to call it, and I really enjoyed that. I was never planning on finishing the whole like Italy studies thing, and weirdly it's named Italy studies and my bachelor's is named French language and culture. I know it's very confusing, they're the exact same things, however Italian studies had switched to the new formatting, so therefore it was Italian studies, and that right now now, if you go study at the University of Amsterdam, it's French studies as well. Like the name of my degree doesn't exist anymore. So that's French studies now. So therefore I was in the old sort of version and the new version with Italy studies. Very confusing. And the reason why I decided to do that was effectively that in the Netherlands, if you finish the first year of a bachelor degree, you get a certificate for that, or a diploma, like a proper juridic diploma. It does not work in English, but you get a certificate for finishing essentially a third of a bachelor's degree. And I wanted to get that certificate for Italy studies because in the end, probably again, the quality of education, I didn't feel challenged enough by my own degree that I wanted to take on something extra. But all this liberty also meant that I was actually able to go on exchange, and I was incredibly excited for that. Most of my peers actually decided to go on to France or Morocco or another French-speaking country, but I decided to pack my bags and go to New York because why not? So I added on a fourth year on my bachelor's degree, so essentially I had finished my bachelor's, but I wanted to go on abroad, so I added on a fourth year, which is quite easy to do in the Netherlands. Again, we have a very weird like uni/school structure and system, so I added on this extra year and just left for a full year to go to New York to study French essentially. And I had to convince the University of Amsterdam that I really needed to go to New York to improve my French, and I managed to do that. I'm still quite proud of that I actually managed to do that because it's a bit outside of the box, but also I think it really helped me in loads and loads of different ways for me to have that opportunity to go to New York and do something that's like out of the box. So I went to Hunter College, which is on 68th and Lexington in Manhattan, and I lived for a full year in Manhattan, and I had a great time, honestly. And I did French as I was planning on doing, but also followed courses such as economics, and I did some ballet even. I got credits for that, which was quite cool. So I actually had a really great time. I joined a sorority, did the American thing, made a lot of friends, but it also highlighted for me that the University of Amsterdam maybe was not the best place for me to study at on like different levels, not just the fact that I felt that the quality of education was not great at the University of Amsterdam, at least for like my French degree. I don't know what it is like for like the other 100 or 200 options that they offer. I have no idea. But it also the way like it was structured and how easy you were able to get in touch with professors. And I won't go into it too far and too deep, but essentially for me, this also confirmed that I didn't want to do a master's at the University of Amsterdam like at all. I wanted to get out of there. At that point, I also found out that I actually enjoyed the style of teaching much better in the States than I did back in the Netherlands, because everything is more discussion based, and I think that helped me a lot. And I'm still to this day, I'm very glad that I had this US experience prior to going into Oxford, because otherwise I would have been so crazy scared, because everything of that is discussion based as well. And obviously that's like another level than Hunter College. I was very happy to have this sort of in-between bit where I was able to experience this more discussion style based teaching and learning, and I really enjoyed it. So my 2018 and 2019 school year, I was in the States, and then in 2019 I came back very briefly to the Netherlands. I had my graduation, and which was actually very much an anti-climactic experience, because we don't have like massive graduations in the Netherlands as they do in the UK or in the US. We don't have that. So essentially what happened is that I went out with my parents. I did try to make a day out of it, because otherwise it was just way too sad, and I needed to go to the reception desk of an administrative building for my faculty, and I stated that I was there to come and pick up my diploma, and I needed to sign a paper that essentially said that I had picked up my diploma, and then they handed me my diploma, and that was it. That was my official graduation. But oh well, I made a day out of it, had loads of fun, and I'll pop in some photos of my graduation. And then I moved to the UK and I started applying to unis, and it was a whole new experience for me as well, because essentially the whole application process is so different from the Netherlands. Like the school system is way different. So this was something I'd never experienced before, even with my like bachelor's application, which I just was essentially an email to the University of Amsterdam being like, oh my god, I can't go to France, can I please go study with you? And they were like, yeah, sure. So essentially it's a whole different sort of system. So I'd never been to a process where I need to write an essay, I need to hand in like writing samples, where I potentially had to go on an interview. It was all a whole new experience for me, and I did really enjoy it, but it was also quite stressful. And on the other hand, I also had literally no idea what they're going to make of me, because on the one hand I studied French at the University of Amsterdam, but I did a year abroad in the States, and I also have like this weird year of Italy studies that I did. So it was a bit of a mess. was like, I don't know what's going to happen at this point. We'll see what happens. And then still in 2019, I found out that I was accepted to the University of Oxford to do the MSc in Modern Languages, which essentially is a Master of Arts in French literature, but it's Oxford, so everything has a fancy name. The reason why it's not called Master of Arts is because the Master of Arts in Oxford is an honorary degree that students get awarded after X amount of year of finishing a bachelor's degree. So therefore it's an MSc, Master of Studies, but essentially it's just a Master of Arts in Modern Languages. The Modern Languages being the faculty. Within that, obviously, I focused on French literature. So essentially it's a Master of Arts in French lit, but it's an MSc in Modern Languages at Oxford. And I was absolutely over the moon because this was my first choice uni, like by far, and I thought it was absolutely insane and crazy, and I was so super beyond excited to go there. And then COVID happened, and I was freaking out because I was like, is my year going to continue? Is everything going to be remote? Am I going to have the Oxford experience? How is this going to work? Are they going to like postpone us or decline everybody's acceptance? So I was very stressed at that point. Fortunately, it all worked out, and in September or like October 2020, I started at Oxford for my master's, which was a one-year master, and I really enjoyed it. It was really great. I had a great time, even though it was COVID, and my second term was remote entirely. Everything else was just incredibly fun, and I just had a great time. And again, I learned a lot as well, and again, with the learning structure, it's something that suits me way better than the teaching methods are back in the Netherlands. It's way more discussion based, and I quite enjoyed that, and it was essentially even more discussion based than Hunter was, so I was happy to have that like in between bit of Hunter that I talked about earlier. So during that year, I also started applying to grad schemes, and that was a shit show. If you have seen more of my videos, that did not work out quite well. I applied to 9 T-jobs, 9-0. I got rejected by all of them, so that was not great, but also it was in COVID, so I have to put in perspective, and I was a foreign student, had 0 experience applying to jobs, so that probably also played a big role in it. That did not quite go well. So I graduated in 2020 without a job, and I started applying again essentially in September, and I also had my graduation in September. My parents came over and COVID was sort of on the way out, so it was a bit easier, and then I started applying again, and I was actually quite stressed about actually landing a job at this point. So I was happy to find out a couple months later that I actually ended up getting multiple job offers, and I was utter shocked that worked out. I still don't know what the magic difference was. I think it was probably my experience in applying to jobs, the fact that COVID was on its way out, also that people knew what COVID was going to look like a bit better, be more prepared for it. But yeah, it also means that when I found out in around like December 2021 that I had a gap year again, sort of, because I was going to start in September 2022, so I needed to find something to fill the gap because I didn't want to do something. I don't want to like sit at home and do nothing, but I also didn't really know what to do, so that was a bit of a weird situation. And then in February I started on a job. It actually turned out to be very fun, and I really enjoyed it, and I saved up money and went on a massive trip over summer because I figured that was going to be my last student summer ever, because now I am working full-time, and if I want to go somewhere I do have to officially request time off and that sort of thing. Started back in September, and since I have been on my graduate scheme and I've been really enjoying it. So yeah, this is essentially the entire journey to Oxford, and then from Oxford to the graduate scheme. So I hope this was helpful and answered some of your questions in terms of what on earth did I actually do prior to going to Oxford or getting on this graduate scheme. And obviously my route is not the best route or the best journey to Oxford or a graduate scheme. It's just sort of happened this way. I also, when I was in high school, I never thought that I would go to Oxford. Like, it was never even a thought in my mind that Oxford was, well, maybe not even a possibility, but I never gave it a single thought about going there at all, because I wanted to go to France and I wanted to study French lit, and England just, I don't know, was just not in my brain at all. Looking back, I'm happy with all the decisions that I made, and I know that was really sad I didn't go to France, and looking back on it now, the University of Amsterdam is a better uni than the uni that I was looking into in France. So I am quite happy that I actually didn't end up going to France, because otherwise I would have never have gone to Oxford, probably did not end up on a graduate scheme. So in the end, I'm quite happy with my whole higher education journey, and my big one piece of advice would be just go with it. Like, go with the plans, go with the things things that are popping up on your plate at one point. If some friend of yours is going like, let's go to Asia on an exchange, then just do it, you know, why not? Because you're a student, you can just go. And I would just highly recommend just sort of going with the flow and just always trying your best. I think that in the end is what I did, and that's what brought me here. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in a next video. Bye.